Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Riverfront. We are the world's most dangerous podcast. We discuss the Cincinnati Reds and, on occasion, Lenny Harris. I am Tim Daniel. If you see here to my right joining me this week, you can check him out each and every day during the week on Locked On Reds. My good friend, and obviously yours as well, if you care about the Cincinnati Reds and media, Steven Offenbaker. Buddy, thanks for hanging out with me tonight.
No problem. How is everybody tonight? This is great.
It is great. So last time you were on with me was Late Night Reds. You did the Christmas movie draft episode, which got rave reviews, by the way. Rave reviews. We all were, except for Ben and Seth, because Seth is not one to partake. But we were feeling pretty good that night. So
Well, that's right. I had my apple juice.
yeah,
If you watched that episode, yeah.
Yeah, we had a good time. So it was a lot of fun. So I wanted to take today. We may be being joined by a certain person as well later in the show. I'm hoping to fit them in, and see how things go there. But want to take today to kind of celebrate, have a good time, because there hasn't been a whole lot of Reds news the past few days, and also. Seth and I did the thing last year. We talked about the 2010 team and the anniversary of that team. It's also this year's the 30th anniversary of the 95 team. So we're going to get into the 1995 Reds today. We're going to talk about the Cobra getting into Cooperstown finally and a few other things. But Steve, I guess we will spend some time discussing some current Reds news to start the show. And Bob Nightingale, not Bobby Nightingale, Bob Senior, I guess we call him in this circumstance, did put a tweet out yesterday that the Reds are actively in talks with reliever Carlos Estevez. And of course, that news would come out after Late Night Reds does their relief pitcher breakdown this past Sunday. So thanks, Bob. Appreciate you on that. Estevez, there's links for the Reds earlier in the offseason. Things fell apart apparently when they found out his asking price. So I'm not 1,000% certain how this is coming up again, but I guess Carlos Estevez is on the Reds' radar again.
That's right. I mean, I loved him in Major League. He was so good. I feel like if you know what I'm talking about, Charlie Sheen's real name. First of all, if they do sign him, when he comes out of the bullpen, they have to play Wild Thing. That needs
absolutely
to be
every time.
Has to happen. Here's the deal. Jeff and I spent a lot of time talking about this on our live show on Thursday. And you know where I land is this. I am fine with this signing. If they do sign him, also it means they're not getting an outfielder. There's probably about $10 million in wiggle room left in the budget that Nick Krall has been handed by the Castellinis. If they go out and sign Estevez, then that's going to be that, and they're going to have to roll with what they've got pretty much in the outfield. The bullpen. We've been pretty focused on looking at that outfielder because it's been multiple years of ignoring the need for a right-handed power-hitting outfield bat.
Right.
But the bullpen, while they've done a few things, the bullpen still needed a little bit of work in order to I think help carry this team. So you find yourself in a situation where you can't really be mad if they go get another pitcher because they don't have a lot of back end of the bullpen type arms. We think that if Graham Ashcraft does make the move out there, he could be that guy, but he won't be that guy right away. Right. Alexis Diaz has shown he can be that guy at times and needs to just get a little bit more consistent. But they don't have anybody really for the nights that Alexis Diaz can't go. And if you went out and got a Carlos Estevez, I think you would have your guy. You could then take the bullpen and look at it in groups. Late inning group of Ashcraft, Estevez, and Diaz. Early inning group that would consist of Brent Suter and Emilio Pagan, and then everybody else kind of slots in where you need them as far as the bullpen goes. So if they make this signing, I'm fine with it. You just have to be willing to accept what it means for the outfield hunt. Looking at Estevez's numbers, you know, last year was a career year for him with the Angels and the Phillies, and that always makes me nervous because you're like, was that really the guy? But if you look back through his history, he had a lot of years where he was just better than adequate. And if you look at specifically his strikeouts per nine and his walks per nine, they both came down. Now, if just the strikeouts per nine had come down, that would have been concerning. But the fact that the walks per nine came down also, I think what happened is Estevez started pitching to contact rather than trying to overpower people. And I'm okay with that because I think it fits with Francona's philosophy. And I think it fits with what Francona is going to ask of Derek Johnson in the managing of the pitching staff. So this would be a good signing. Now, the way we framed this yesterday, Tim, is that where there's smoke, it doesn't necessarily mean there's fire. These rumors have been out there for a while.
Right,
And
right.
we see these kind of rumors from the Reds. We see these kind of rumors always come from the other side when they're trying to nudge the conversation or they're trying to nudge what is happening. So I don't have any reason to believe that this is any different than those other times. And I feel like this is the other side trying to nudge the conversation. That doesn't necessarily mean a deal won't get done, but I would be totally okay if they made this sign.
I would too. So you mentioned obviously just kind of his strikeouts to 9 and things like that. You talked about last year with his time with the Angels and the Phillies being a career year. The year before, his only full year with the Angels, he's an all-star. Colorado is Colorado, so we obviously know what that's going to do to pitchers, but he had like a 4.59 in Colorado. In other stadiums, that's like a 3.3.
That's fine. Yeah, no, that's perfectly acceptable.
Right. So I like it. I mean, if they do move forward with him, like you mentioned, just kind of shoring up that back end of the bullpen. I joked on Late Night Red Sunday. I was really shocked that Buck Farmer was not with the Reds yet. Again, maybe this is why. Maybe this is the point. So hopefully, because that's certainly an upgrade if so. But yeah, I like it if they do move forward with it. If they don't, like you said, and they kind of try to make an outfield thing happen with these last couple of weeks for spring training, I'm fine with that too. We're literally now, today's the 23rd. We're recording this. First spring training is February 22nd. So we're getting there. We're getting awfully close. And so if Estevez is the next move, sure. Does that mean you try, in the outfield thing is what it is? Whatever. I think we kind of know the outfield thing's going to be what it is with or without Estevez at this point. So
it's looking that way.
Yeah.
I spent quite a bit of time on yesterday's live show really lamenting the fact that I suddenly find myself in the position of Team Freychild, which is the combined outfielder of Jake Fraley and Stuart Fairchild.
Yep.
I believe Terry Francona is light years ahead of where David Bell was as a manager with baseball smarts. Yes. So I believe that Tito is going to use players in better situations to get more out of them. I believe that. I believe that the combined outfielder of Freychild, of Jake Fraley and Stuart Fairchild, if Stuart Fairchild never, ever sees a right-handed pitcher, listen, I don't care if it's my mother on the mound. She throws right-handed. He doesn't get to bat against her.
Yeah.
That just has to be the rule. But if you make that outfielder, if that's one of your corner outfielders, that Freychild combination, that outfielder statistically is a 115 to 120 OPS plus outfielder. That's cool. That's fine. As long as you use them that way and nobody else gets hurt. The real linchpin of the 2025 season, the real player that's going to decide how everything goes is TJ Friedl. Because if he is 2023 TJ Friedl, this team is cooking with gas. If he's 2024 TJ Friedl and you have to start asking players to do things that they shouldn't be doing, the Reds have a real problem.
Yeah, I talked about a couple weeks ago on, I don't know, one of these shows. I'm doing them all right now. So Mark Sheldon had this article on MLB.com that was just like literally looked straight out of something Nick Kroll wrote. And it's like how the Reds can manage the overabundance of infielders. And it's like move Elliott to third base, move Matt McClain to center field. I'm like, oh my God, can we not do this year? Can we just have a year where we don't have this speculation going into spring training?
This is going to make you unhappy, but there are within the Reds organization low-level conversations right now.
Oh, I know.
Of moving Ellie De La Cruz to the outfield, specifically center field, which I am adamantly against.
Same.
I would entertain a move to the corner. If you're going to put him out there, it needs to be a corner, not center, because he's going to kill himself playing center field. I think he's naturally a third baseman. I really think that as he continues to bulk up and fill out and reaches his peak physical condition, he's just looks like third baseman to me. So that's what I would do with him. The Reds' best defensive arrangement this season on the infield would be De La Cruz at third, Matt McClain at short, Gavin Lux at second, and then a combination of CES and Jamer Candelario and whatever else you want to do at first base.
First base sounds fun. Can't wait for it. Um, I don't mind Ellie playing third base, and I agree with you. I think naturally that's somewhere where he really fits very well. And I understand you have this abundance in your middle infield. I would be very much confident and hopeful that they just keep him where he's at because, yeah, he was still a very positive defender last year, even with leading the league in errors. And I think that's only going to get better as far as his reading. But yeah, I mean, if it's all of a sudden tomorrow, like Ellie De La Cruz, your third baseman, yeah, sign me up. I'm in because last year third base was a poop show, as we put it nowadays, since we don't curse on the network anymore. So,
oh, is that a new thing? Are we not doing that? Okay.
You can. I don't care.
That should have been in the show notes, brother.
Yeah, I don't care what you do. It's I'm just trying to make sure we're a family environment nowadays. We're working really hard on that. So I don't care. You can say shit show. It was a shit show. So I was just trying to be polite. But yeah, man. So there's that conversation there as well. The Matt McClain center field thing is, and like Joel Luckup and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, and the conversation comes up a lot, and I get it, and I understand why it comes up. But for me, I don't like it. And it's not the fact that I don't think he can do it. I certainly think he can do it. I just don't like this, Steven. Hear me out. Shocking, I know. I don't really like this thing where you take really, really talented, high-tier prospects and just change positions on them all the time. I don't know if the Reds have learned from their history. That hasn't worked out very well.
It hasn't, but it's going to happen this year. You will see McClain in the outfield, and you will see Gavin Lux in the outfield.
I'm fine with that.
If you look at this, if you look at this position group, it needs supplementing. And if it's not going to be Ellie, and we might see Ellie out, Ellie could play corner outfield right now. He could play corner outfield without having to take any reps anywhere at any time. You could just be like, listen, kid, go play left. And he would be able to do that. Not necessarily center field and be able to direct traffic and do all the things, but he would be able to play corner. Matt McClain could go play center field for you right now. Gavin Lux could go play corner outfield for you right now. In order to get all of the bats in all of the time, that's going to have to be a consideration. Matt McClain, in his heart of hearts, is a shortstop and wants to be a shortstop. He's told me so, but I think he's also could be an all-world Gold Glove second baseman if they just stick him over there and leave him alone. None of those things are going to happen. People are going to move around. It's just the way it's going to be. Matt McClain has said some things in recent weeks that lead me to believe they've told him that already. He's hinted around it. Gavin Lux, Nick Carl's press conference stated it outright that Gavin Lux is going to move around. So this is just the reality of what the Reds baseball in 2025 is going to look like. There are going to be very few people that just show up every day and play a position. The aforementioned TJ Friedl will be one of them. If he's healthy and producing, he will be the center fielder, and he was not going to move around unless he just needs a day off. Tyler Stevenson, I hope, is in that list, but
yeah,
there's some wonky thoughts out there that he may see a return to some time at first base, which I don't know how I feel about that truly, but
I'm out.
I would like to see what Tyler continues to do to build upon what he did last year, because he had a really good second half. Yeah. So for me, I mean, I think you're just going to have to be willing to deal with it. I think that's going to be, how's that for a t-shirt? The 2025 Cincinnati Reds. Just be willing to deal with it. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I think we're at this point. That's what we're in general. But yeah, so you're right. Basically, those two guys, Friedl and Stevenson, are the two guys you can more than likely count on. They're going to play every day they're in the line. They're going to play the same position. Everyone else, we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
But it is what it is. So let's get to some fun stuff here, because we had our Cooperstown and announcement this week of who was all getting in. And Steve, I'm also going to start with the local ties before we get to the remainder of the class, because this is the one that means the most to us. Dave Parker is finally going to his rightful place in Cooperstown, New York, as a member of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, I understand he's going to go in for that cesspool of a city and on the Eastern Seaboard. That, I guess not really on the Eastern Seaboard, but in Pennsylvania, that's really disgusting. But I think when we talk about the beginning of the 1990 World Series Cincinnati Reds, I think Dave Parker has to be in that conversation in the sense that, no, he wasn't on that team. I think he might have been playing for the Angels at that point, if I remember correctly. Somewhere weird where he didn't look right in the jersey. Yeah, he didn't look right in the jersey. I was going to say,
he was in Milwaukee.
But You look at you talk about guys like Eric Davis and Barry Larkin, they credit him a lot for kind of teaching them professionalism and leadership and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure we took time here to talk about the man, Dave Parker, getting into Cooperstown, and I'm stoked for him.
I'm super happy for him, but I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. How's that grab you for headline news? I talked to Jeff about this when the announcement, when we kicked around the Hall of Famers. For his career, 40.1 in WAR, I think over a 19-20 year career, something like that. He had a lot of really good years, and he did it for a really long time. And I guess if you're okay with the Hall of really good, the Hall of better than average, the Hall of a little outside the ordinary, then definitely Parker's your guy. I renew my complete dissatisfaction with how these players are selected. I renew my total disgust that arrogant blowhards are given the ability to make these picks and do things like leave Ichiro Suzuki off of their ballot. Like, if you have any baseball knowledge in your head at all, and you can look at that ballot and then look back at me and say with a straight face that Ichiro Suzuki is not a Hall of Famer, then you don't deserve to have a job or a vote or a place in this game. And I've been on this for a long time. C. Trent and I, when he was the president of the Baseball Writers Association, did an interview where I pissed him off a little bit because I said basically what I just said. And he obviously did not want to agree with me. I have a real problem with it. So all that being said, Parker is in. So congratulations to him. And as I said, he had a lot of really good years. Especially 1977, 78. You go back and look at those 2 years there, Tim. 1977, his WAR was 7.4 and followed it up with a 7.0 season. So congrats to him. I feel like we're really watering down the Hall of Fame, and we're really watering down Cooperstown. And if you can get on a soapbox and shout at me and tell me how wrong I am about Dave Parker, you better be one of the people that when Joey Votto's name shows up on this Hall of Fame ballot are jumping up and down and ready to march on towns with pitchforks if Joey Votto is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm just going to park that right there.
Well, I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to be picketing and protesting if he's not voted in on first try for that certain reason. So yeah, I'm with you. I get where you're coming from, and I don't have an issue with your conversation. Maybe I'm just thinking the fact that that 3 or 4 times I've met Dave Parker, he's been extremely cool, and is probably one of the coolest dudes to ever walk the earth with Eric Davis, just extremely cool dudes. And there is not a such thing as the Hall of Cool for Hall of Fame, but if there was, right, he would have been a first balloter. But I'm all right with it, man. There are worse players than Dave Parker in Cooperstown, to kind of further your points. There are certainly a lot better ones too. But I like that he got his chance to get in. So kudos to him. It's exciting. Unfortunately, I've told this story. So the last time I met him was shortly after his diagnosis, I think. I want to say the timeline lines up. So I did meet him, and he signed a ball for me, but unfortunately the signature smeared. But I was like, you know what? I don't care. It's a Dave Parker signed ball. It's staying in my collection. It's not going anywhere. He's the man. So I think it's cool he got in. I'm excited for him.
And just as one additional aside, if you're pro Dave Parker, Hall of Fame, great. Also, I need you to be pro Veda Pinson.
Oh, 1,000%.
Veda Pinson had a career WAR of somewhere in the neighborhood of 54.2, so 14 points higher than Dave Parker. And Veda Pinson played 18 years, so just 1 year less than Dave Parker, but had more WAR. So I'm just saying, if you're gonna be rah-rah and Dave Parker, please get on board and put some pressure out there on social media or whatever and get guys that are deserving into the Hall of Fame.
I feel like we're doing this in all Cincinnati sports right now. The fact that we're still fighting for Ken Anderson to get into Canton is stupid. It's so stupid. This is so dumb. This should have happened many moons ago.
Because the NFL hates the Brown family, they take it out on the players, and that's what that's about. The fact that they waited until Ken Riley died to put him in the Hall of Fame, that's criminal. It's absolutely criminal.
Yeah, I agree. And Willie Anderson is a Hall of Famer. He was the best. He was the best in the game at his position for a very long time. So, if you don't agree,
sorry,
with me,
I know that tangent wasn't in the rundown. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. For sure. Let's kind of go through the rest of the class real quick while we have some time. And you mentioned Ichiro already. So obviously, I've said this on the show before. The Seattle Mariners are almost sort of kind of my American League team because when the Reds were really bad, you had to have another team to watch. And it's because like literally all my favorite players at some point besides Joey were Mariners at some point. So Griffey, Ichiro, Randy Johnson, and for a very, very short time, the late great, rest in peace, God rest his soul, Ricky Henderson. We're all Mariners. So they're the team I always paid attention to. So Ichiro was someone who I was always really excited about and obviously had an incredible career. I finally got to see him play in person his last year with the Marlins. They came here and I got to go to a game. So I got to see late Ichiro, but to me, it was still seeing Ichiro. If you saw Michael Jordan play with the Wizards, you weren't complaining that you didn't see Michael Jordan, right? So
exactly.
So getting to see him was awesome, and I'm so happy he got in. But most importantly, Steve, the thing I'm happiest about is that the Hit King finally got in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, Tim. Listen, I understand the spirit from which that comes, but no. The Japan stuff doesn't get to count. Maybe that changes somewhere down the road, but it doesn't get to count. It is an inferior league. They have some tremendous players, so let me just start with that. They have some
they're on the Dodgers
players,
now,
but they're all on the Dodgers, correct?
Yeah.
And the rest of them, while very good, they're not all major league quality. And so as I appreciate where the spirit of that remark comes from, no, but at the same time, he had more than 3,000 hits, 3,089 hits in 19 years for a major league career that didn't start until he was 27 years old. So he played till he was 45. It's amazing. He's amazing. 60 WAR, again, starting at age 27. He's phenomenal.
I love that when he found that Griffey was the one who told him he was getting in. Did you see the clip?
I did.
He's like, George! I mean, which is really funny considering they were teammates for 2 years. No, a year and a month, because the infamous rumor of Griffey falling asleep in the clubhouse game before he called it quits. But they did some really funny commercials together for the Sell Mariners season tickets. Those are fun. You can always YouTube those if you haven't seen them. So that's there as well. Billy Wagner, I thought this was a decent one. Obviously, got 82.5% of the vote. So obviously, we all remember Billy Wagner in his Astros days when the Astros were in the NL Central, kicking the Reds' ass every year, and he was always taking care of business. That part wasn't very fun, but this is one of those where, 27.7 career WAR, 2.3 career ERA, amongst the greats in all times in saves. So has a decent resume. I believe does not have a World Series. I have been corrected. 7-time All-Star and 1-time Roll Age relief winner. So Billy Wagner got in.
I got no problem with that. It's hard for relief pitchers, and his numbers were elite for a long period of time. Good for him. Congratulations.
Yeah, like him a lot, even though he just used to destroy us. That part I didn't like so much. And then my guy, my favorite baseball podcaster of all time, and the fact he doesn't podcast anymore really bums me out. Besides you, of course. CC Sabathia is in the Hall of Fame. And obviously, we're all going to remember him for his 2 months with the Milwaukee Brewers.
Milwaukee. Yeah. What you going to do? Yeah. 61.8 in WAR over 19 seasons there, Tim. He's, he did a lot of things. 251 wins, 3.74 career ERA, career strikeouts per 9, 7.8, career base on balls per 9, 2.8. So he got it under that magic 3 number that I like to look at for his career. Pitched in the pressure cooker that is New York City for a long, long time. And again, it's hard for pitchers. So congrats to him. Does he get in if he spent the rest of his career in Milwaukee? Probably, but I don't know. I think it helped being in New York and
Oh, it did for sure.
dealing with the exposure that you got there. But good for him.
It's wild he's going to go in as a Yankee. Not that it doesn't make the most sense, but like
Mm-hmm.
how freaking good he was when he first came up with the Indians.
Mm-hmm.
And the Indians is where he has the Cy Young. So I also remember was in Milwaukee. It was like a few months he was there. He had a couple homers. He was like, he was a decent batter, which was kind of surprising. He was a good athlete. So I really like him a lot. Oh, crap. I almost forgot to tell this amazing story that Rex Scott posted that I have to put in there. So Rex Scott, one of our excellent Patreon listener subscribers, posted this, and I had to make sure I got to it because this story has to be told. So when I asked for our fan mail this week, he told the story of back when Parker was a Red, he had a habit of swiping his glove at fly balls to catch them. It looked cool and he was usually successful. One time that he didn't led to multiple runs scoring for the other team and the Reds losing a safe lead. Seized by rage, I threw a full pounder of Old Milwaukee. Cheap beer is good when you're young. At the wall, showering one of my brothers and a friend with suds. To this day, any mention of his name causes those two guys to laugh and deride me.
Throw some suds.
Yeah. Thought I had to make sure I got that in. Before we get to the 95 team, have you looked at all at the 2026 first-time inductees? It's not very good.
It's not a very good list.
No.
It is not.
I think the only one that I would even have a deep thought about was Cole Hamels, and I'm not 100% certain that's a yes for me.
Right?
Yeah.
It is a pretty bleak class. So I wonder if the Hypocritical Hall is going to do something to try to drum up some interest and, maybe talk about other players that have, I don't know, 4,000 plus hits that aren't in the hall. Now that they're dead. I would not be shocked. It would not shock me if they try and do something along those lines.
I don't think they will. I don't think they're ever going to let it go. But that's neither here nor there.
I don't know. That class is pretty bad, man.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Maybe this is the Bonds McGuire year. Maybe this is when they're like, right? All right, fine.
This is what I'm saying.
Rocket, Roger Clemens, like this is just the juiced era class where it's like, let's just put him in. F it.
The asterisk class of 2026. Is that what we're gonna do?
I'm down for it. Maybe we just go ahead and push up. Maybe this is the year Andrew Jones finally gets in because holy hell. But I don't know. That's a conversation for another day. So I have been trying to delay a little bit this conversation just because I wanted to. Hopefully, we had someone who was looking to come in and hang out with us, but I don't know if they're going to make it quite yet. But I think we can go ahead and start here because, like Seth mentioned last week when we were on here, this year is going to be the 50th anniversary of the 2010 Reds, who won the NL Central, went to the playoffs for the first time in 15 years. Also, this would be the 30th anniversary. Holy hell. Of the 1995 Cincinnati Reds, the last team to go to the playoffs before the 2010 team. And this team, how would I put it correctly? Kicked so much ass. They were so good. And so I really wanted to kind of make this probably a regular thing we do through the year. But Steve, first things first, we do have our guest. Hey!
Oh my God, he does exist.
He's here.
Look at that.
He lives. What's
Chad.
going on, guys?
Chad Dotson in the house with us tonight on the riverfront. So happy to have our fearless leader back. And there could have been better timing because I was literally going to start the whole segment I drew up for you. So
Excellent. Good timing.
Yeah, so we didn't get to it just yet. So we did talk a little bit about the Hall. Steve and I are at odds on Dave Parker getting in. You're going to be the tiebreaker. Do you think he should have got in or not?
Okay, so the short answer is yes. I think he should have gotten in. The longer answer is I would have had a different answer probably 5 years ago, pre-Harold Baines getting in. But if they let guys like Harold Baines in, you got to let Dave Parker, you got to let Dave Concepcion, you got to let Veda Pinson in. That's my answer.
Absolutely. So good. Steve, I win. So take that.
Kinda, except he said a lot of the same things I did to say why he shouldn't be in. So,
yeah.
Well, I've been arguing with Steve probably since 1995. So
that is absolutely accurate. That is when this started, 1995. Shout out to Bill Lack.
to lead into the next segment there, Tim. Just trying to set it on a tee for you.
I like it. So my first question before we get into this, so talking about this is the anniversary of these two postseason teams, 95 and 2010. Should we do what we did in 2000 again? Should we just go and put the patch on the sleeve that just says 30 and 15?
No.
I think
That's how bad we need success, Steve.
Let's just put a patch on that has a picture of Junior Griffey 25 years ago next month, pulling on that Reds cap for the first time. Let's do that. Let's celebrate that.
Oh, dude, that's gonna be a whole podcast show that I just am dying to do because of that. I've told that story a million times, but it's like my favorite moment ever. So, we're kind of getting real quick. So I was asking Steve. So when you talk about the 95 team, obviously what they did, how great they were, but this started really with the 94 team, who was really, really good before the strike kicked in. And then obviously the strike was still going on into the first few weeks of what was supposed to be the 95 season. So they started a little later, but they were 85 and 59. They had two hitters on the team that is 6 WAR. They had 4 All-Stars, including a 1-year player for the Reds and Ronnie Gant. Would you call that 1 year? I think, yeah. And then, of course, this was Barry Larkin's MVP season as well. So, Steve, I'll start with you here. Your memories when you look back at the 95 team. Also, did you have hair then?
I had hair then, believe it or not. That team had so many fun guys on it, right? Deion Sanders was on that team. Fun, energy guy. Benito Santiago was on this team. And as a novice catcher, loved watching him and his antics in his career. So he was fun to watch. Hal Morris was on that team. Hal Morris, while he doesn't get many accolades or it's never on anybody's favorite player list, just because he was, average Joe workhorse man over at first base. He was my favorite guy because I hit just like Hal Morris from a standpoint of didn't have any power, slapped the ball around a little bit, and most of the time got stuck playing first base. So Hal Morris was my favorite guy on that whole decade pretty much. And then of course you had Barry Larkin, his breakout MVP year, really the year that he became the national name that he deserved to be and started building upon his Hall of Fame career. So this was a fun team. And we haven't even talked about any of the pitching on this team, right? But
yeah,
just going around the field. And then you talk about Ron Gant. Ron Gant 3.3 WAR that season, but was so much more, I think, integral to that team than just looking at his baseball card will ever tell you about, coming into the organization, coming into the city and really being a motivator, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know where Chad's going to start here because this was really the elite Reggie Sanders year in Cincinnati.
You know me so well, Tim.
I know.
So, Barry Larkin, obviously my favorite player. Love Barry Larkin. Glad he won the MVP. But the fact of the matter is Barry Larkin was the second best player on this Reds team. This was Reggie Sanders' year. And it's so funny to me when I make the case that Reggie Sanders should be in the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. And I make that case far too often because I care way too much about the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. And I point to this season, 6.6 wins above replacement. 28 homers, 99 RBIs, 306 average, 579, 975 OPS, 155 OPS plus. I mean, that is elite levels of production that is up there with some of the best hitters in Reds history. But every time I talk about that, everyone points to 1995 as the reason Reggie Sanders shouldn't be in. And we'll get to that later in the discussion, I'm sure. But just absolutely elite. He was. He and Gant in that outfield were so much fun. I mean, Larkin was Larkin. We loved Larkin already.
Yeah.
Seeing those two out there and Gant sort of come back year after the injury, just incredibly fun. Both those guys in the All-Star game. But really, I mean, Sanders is what I love. But my favorite part of that year, though, it was Pete Shurrock.
Yeah. Second in Cy Young voting. Didn't get voted to the All-Star game.
Pete Shurrock out of nowhere. 26-year-old. He'd come over from the Mets and just was an ace. What was he? 18-7 that year.
Yep. And
should have been an all-star. But second in Cy Young and does this team, because look, the pitching was okay. I mean, John Smiley was an all-star that year. And then later in the year, they obviously added with a guy that made the all-stars in the American League. But Shurrock was the Yeah, David Wells, right. But Shurk was the guy from day one that just, hey, do we have an ace? What's going on here? And it was so exciting because the offense was high powered, and then you see this guy just sort of come out of nowhere. And it's kind of, I think, I often say the '95 team was my favorite Reds team, and I think some of that is because through all like the 2000s and really, from 2000 to 2010, really, we had all those great offenses that, the Adam Dunn, Junior Griffey, Austin Kearns years, all that. The Felipe Lopez era, I call it.
Mm-hmm.
And we just kept thinking if they could just get some pitching, how great would they be? Well, this 95 team got some pitching, and it was, it didn't end great, but it was such a fun team. I to this day, I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I was 6, so this.
All right, Tim. All right.
I just had to make
and if we're talking pitching, we'd also be remiss in not mentioning the Cowboy, Jeff Brantley, out there as the closer for that team with a 2.82 ERA, 56 games pitched, saved 28 games, kept his walks per 9 under 3, which is what I look for at 2.6, and struck out nearly 8 batters per 9.
The legend Dave Burba was on this team. So
Burba,
Springfield's own.
Yeah. So shout out Dave Burba there as well. You mentioned Tim Pugh. How about let's give him some love as well? Give him his flowers, right? Right.
His best year, I think. All right.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is, like you said, this is a really fun team. Brett Boone was like, this is kind of like when you try to just kind of see the beginning of his All-Star tenure. I think he had like a 1.9 WAR that year, but he was still pretty okay. Darren Lewis was the majority center fielder of this team. He was okay, but they won a lot of games very, very convincingly at that too. So kind of looking at it right now, they had a lot of stretches there. Davey Johnson was the manager of this team as well. And Davey Johnson was a pretty awesome manager for this team. It was really weird when he ended up managing the Nationals in that short tenure, and they were coming to Cincinnati. I didn't like that very much.
No. I think that I have a thing it's in drafts, I guess, but I've been thinking about writing and been working on it for probably 2 years now, but just the best managers ever. And everybody always says Sparky, there's everybody, but I tell you, I think Davey Johnson is an inner circle, one of the greatest managers in Reds history. And his tenure was interrupted by nonsense from Marge Schott that we can get into if you want to, but he was a legitimately great manager. And he was the one manager after Lou where I was, most managers, I mean, even, Dusty had great success, but most managers are just like pulling your hair out. Well, Steve and I aren't doing that anymore, but you're pulling your hair out. And it wasn't that way with Davey Johnson. I know a 6-year-old Tim doesn't remember, but this guy was a steady hand on the rudder. And I'm just constantly going to say that he's the best or second best. I think he's the best Reds manager because I was basically post Sparky, when I came along. So I think he's the best Reds manager of my lifetime.
And I think we should talk for just a second about that Marge Schott nonsense, because I am convinced if she had stayed out of the way, the Reds win a World Series in the late 90s. They win a World Series there with Davey Johnson at the helm, but instead he goes off to Baltimore. So if she had just left it alone and let him date whoever he wanted to date and let them live wherever they wanted to live, then by God, we would be talking about more than some playoff appearances since the 1990 World Series.
And for the kids out there that don't know the story, I mean, he was living with his girlfriend at the time and they weren't married. So Marge Schott just did not approve of that because she was absolutely, completely moral in every way and wanted to make sure that no one associated with the Reds did anything that would embarrass the Reds. And just ludicrous, and ran him out of town in favor of, this is the worst part of it, in favor of Ray Knight.
Yeah.
One of the worst managers in the history of this sport.
Yeah. You know what's else amazing about this team? They started 1-8.
Yeah.
So they start the year against the Cubs. They lose those 2. They get swept in San Diego. 2 of those are walk-offs. They lose the first game in Philly. They finally get their first win. And then they lose the next 2 to Philly and the Mets. And then they have May 6th of that year. They have a 13-11 game against the New York Mets where they have a walk-off win. So that was like the beginning of the change around things. They had scored 6 in the 8th and 3 in the 9th to take the win. They were down 11-4.
Well, it's interesting. It's the opposite of the 1990 Reds that started out 9-0. But
yeah,
I had actually forgotten until you mentioned that they started out so poorly, because I remember being so excited about that team because of how, 94, I was convinced. Steve probably was. I was convinced they were going to win the World Series in 94. Everybody kept saying, oh, the Expos were so great. The Reds were in first place. The Reds were going to win that World Series. I'm convinced. And so you get back to 95.
How good would that National League Championship Series have been?
Oh, my gosh.
So
legendary.
We're owed because that would have been one of the all-time fun National League Championship Series, Reds, Expos.
Yeah, I need to get somebody to go and simulate that on MLB The Show or something one of these days.
Yeah, I'll try that.
But we expected big things out of this 95 team because they've been so good in 94. And the undercurrent here, the reason why I always say they're my favorite Reds team is because, you know, the Reds were really bad when I started watching them. But from the mid 80s, when I really first started getting into it, all the way up through 95, they were mostly in the mix. You know, there were some years when they were out of it, but I kind of felt like they were going to be in the hunt every year, you know, because all the adults in my life told me about the Big Red Machine. And then now I have from the mid 80s, you know, they had that 4 straight second place finishes. And then you get the 1990 World Series. And then, you know, they're sort of in the mix. They're in and out of it. But then 95, they're back. And I'm like, this is just the way it's going to be the rest of my life. They're going to be great sometimes. And the rest of the time, they're going to be, you know, they'll be hanging around. And it obviously didn't turn out like that. But I think that's why I remember them so fondly is that they were the last team for a long time that I thought this team really has a chance. And so when they started out poorly, it was upsetting, but then quickly they righted the ship.
Yeah, they ended May on a 9-game win streak. So things got good pretty quickly.
Chad, we were so young and naive back then.
We had no idea. What was
no idea.
So for those who don't know, like Chad made the joke that you guys have been arguing with each other since 95. This was around the time of Bill's like newsletter, right? This is like when that
the listserv, the email listserv. This is 1995 was prime listserv territory.
Yeah, and so that's how you two met, right?
Right, that's correct.
That's how I met Bill Lack as well, but Chris Garber. That's how we met. It was a bunch of hardcore Reds fans.
Greg Rhodes was on that list. Chris
Rhodes.
Welsh monitored that list.
Chris Welsh.
Chris Welsh was on that list. Like there was a group.
Yeah, it was good. That was the precursor to all of this.
Right. Yeah. Look at all of us now. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at us. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Yeah. Was that a Paul Rudd reference?
Yeah.
I like it. So we kind of touched on it a little bit. Chad really did a really good dive into Reggie Sanders, but this is Barry Larkin's MVP year. 5.9 WAR, 131 games played. Was not his 30-30 season for those who get that confused often. He had 51 bags that year. 51 stolen bases, 15 homers, 66 RBIs. Had a 886 OPS and a 134 OPS plus. I think when people talk about Barry Larkin, they're like, yeah, he was really, really good. And I still think they undersell just how good he was this year. And obviously his 30 years or two, the 2 years that we'll always forever talk about. Probably the 2 years that really got him in the Hall of Fame along with that World Series. But man, this was pretty freaking incredible and pretty special.
Barry was so overshadowed early, right? Like it was so good to see him break out and be the star and win the MVP and get, I think, the attention that he was owed, that he deserved. He lived in Ozzie Smith's shadow for such a period of time, right? That, you know, I was really glad to see him finally get some individual recognition and, you know, and help the Reds along the way, obviously. But it was nice for Barry, I think, to see that kind of recognition come out.
And I think that's a great point that Steve makes because Barry had been in some All-Star games, plenty of them before that year. But, you know, he won his first Gold Glove in 1994, Barry Larkin, age 30. I mean, he you know, he'd been overshadowed for his 20. The guy came up at age 22. He'd been overshadowed by Ozzie Smith, and he was clearly superior to Ozzie Smith, but Ozzie Smith got all the headlines and all the highlights. And so 95, frankly, 1996 was a superior season for Larkin in every way.
Yeah.
It was his best season, and he should have won the MVP that year. But those two seasons together, I agree, are where he got his the Hall of Fame, really sort of cemented the Hall of Fame in those 2 years. And he'd been great for a while, but his 1995 season was his best season in a few years. And, you know, he'd gotten into his 30s, and you start to wonder, well, who, you know, is he going to decline? Where's he going to be? And then all of a sudden he gets even better than he'd been for a couple of years there. And just this team, I do like to bang the drum for Reggie Sanders. This team absolutely revolved around Barry Larkin that year, and a bunch of those years around then. And they don't do as well as they did without Barry Larkin. And I don't know that he was the MVP that year, because I don't think he was the best player on the Reds that year. But he was the most important player on the Reds that year. And so, and he was my favorite player. So I'm not going to argue with the MVP.
Yeah. I have a signed Barry Larkin jersey framed in my basement that's hanging up. So he's near to my heart as well. So I agree. Couple things I want to talk about real quick before we get to the playoff portion. Obviously, September was not a great month for this team. They really, really slumped to get to September towards the end of the year. Literally started so that was the first time they got swept by the Braves. They also got swept by the Rockies that month, and they lost 2-3 to the Florida Marlins that month. So, and then of course they have the long lose streak to the Mets before the end of the season, playing in the Expos in Montreal, taking 3 of 4 in that series. So looked like they were kind of almost like a lot of there was a conversation about maybe like backing into the postseason. I wouldn't say it's probably the right thing, because I think they had such a big lead on the division, but certainly took them a bit to get going. And then the Dodgers series happens, and they sweep the Dodgers in the DS. Were you guys kind of like, did you expect them to sweep the Dodgers that year, or did you think it was going to be a close series?
I don't remember how I felt going into it, but I remember coming out of it, I was convinced World Series is a done deal. They're winning the World Series. That's it. I would have printed the t-shirts already.
Yeah. I don't remember whether I thought they were going to win or lose, but I remember that I was not concerned about the September swoon, because that was still 1990 was still recent memory at that time. And the 1990 team had a poor September, and everybody talked about how they sort of back. I know we talk about them wire to wire, but the season didn't end well, and people were skeptical. And I remember thinking, well, that team did it, and that's the best team I've seen in my life. So I wasn't concerned about it, but I remember vividly. I remember like it was yesterday, sitting in my dorm room at college, watching that Dodgers series, and just as giddy as I had been as a teenager watching the 1990 series. And I was the same as Steve. I thought, this team has it. Whatever that 1990 team had, this team has it. And I never would have imagined it would end the way it did. But probably the Mark Lewis grand slam, I think, was in the final game of that series. And when that happened, I remember thinking that this is like I just said, this team has it. I thought that's probably as excited as I've been as a Reds fan. That's one of the top 5 or 10 moments of my Reds fandom, was that Mark Lewis grand slam, because I just thought, well, we're going to do it again. This team's going to be great my whole life, and we're going to win World Series every 5 or 10 years. And it's going to be great.
Benito Santiago homered in the first inning of that series off of Ramon Martinez. So I feel like that was kind of like their shot. So yeah, game 1, they win 7-2. Pete Shirk was awesome. I'm looking at the baseball. I'm looking at the box score right now. So just to kind of make sure I'm not giving anyone misinformation. Game 2 is a close game that they win 5-4. And then, so game 3 off of Hideo Nomo.
They win from the past.
They win 10-1. That's the Mark Lewis grand slam that Chad mentioned. So and David Wells, the winning pitcher in that game, before he goes on to the Yankees and does a perfect game. So that was really cool. And then it wasn't very soon, shortly after. They ran into, in my lifetime, probably, I don't know, the Dodgers have an argument for that now with what they're doing, but the most dominant rotation, maybe, it's for sure my lifetime, I don't know, maybe ever, of Glavine, Maddox, Smoltz, Millwood, and I don't know, you could throw whoever the hell you want as their 5th guy. It didn't matter. But they sweep the Braves sweep the Reds in that series. And like Chad mentioned, this is the thing that everyone holds against Reggie Sanders, where they just completely overlap how great of a year he had and just bring up the NLCS.
Yeah, but he was bad. He was bad.
Good Steve Avery on that team. Was good Steve Avery still good? Steve Avery, not Red Steve Avery, but good Steve Avery.
Yeah, Steve Avery was in that rotation, and they just had their way with the Reds. There's no other way to put it. And not just Sanders, but he was, he struck out, I don't know, like 100 times in 4 games, something like that. It was not good, but that was an elite. I mean, a rotation with 3 Hall of Famers in it. That's not bad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So then we had the 99 team, and that was about it till 2010. So
good times.
Yeah. I make the case the 2000 team had its moments, but it just kind of, once they traded Nagel, it kind of felt like it really fell apart there for the quarterback at Michigan, is who they traded for. So there's that whole thing. But yeah, I
Drew
want
Henson. Drew Henson. Was that who it was? Yeah.
Yeah. The joke is that I guess because George Steinbrenner's like really involved in Ohio State. I think the music room is named after his wife, is what Seth told me. That Judge Steinbrenner traded for him because he said he was going to play football and he wanted him to not play football against Ohio State. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
OH, baby. OH.
I know, Steve. I know.
Hey, I've been good. I haven't brought it up. You brought up Ohio State. You uttered those words first. So now it's on the table, I think.
Kudos, man. They were the better team. There's no denying it. They were the better team. So I have no issues with the fact they won. Really didn't bug me out at all, actually. I was really kind of just like, all right, it's gonna be we're gonna be good for a long time, so I'm happy.
Well, you're a Cincinnati sports fan. You're used to the disappointment,
right?
Anyway,
exactly.
Right? So.
There's that too. Yeah, there's that too. All right, so we did get some fan mail questions that I wanted to make sure we got to before we got out of here. We have some fun ones. So this is a good one from Hooper Pal, which also you can check out if you go to patreon.com/Cincy. You can also ask us these wonderful questions. So Hooper Pal starts us off with, who from the 95 team would you want a night of drinking with? David Wells, Mark Portugal, or Chuck McElroy?
Oh, David Wells.
Wasn't he hungover his perfect game? Wasn't that
Oh my God, that guy has bar fight written all over him. Like, that would be the one.
Yeah, it's clearly David Wells, but I got to say, just thinking about Chuck McElroy remembers how good a lefty reliever he was. I loved watching that guy pitch, but it's clearly David Wells.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the story was when he threw his perfect game, he was hungover, if I remember correctly.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
Hungover? That guy was drinking between innings. What are you talking about?
No, that's the Red Sox down the road with chicken and beer, which is hilarious that was a story. But
right.
That's a podcast for another time. So our good friend from north of the border, Joey Gaditza, is Ron Gant's 1-year stint with the Reds one of the most fun that doesn't get discussed all that often? He was pretty stellar. I think, and you guys can back me up on this if you agree or disagree. So Ron Gant, Shin-Soo Choo, probably top 3 all-time 1-year Reds.
Greg Vaughn for me.
Yeah,
he
Greg
was pretty
Vaughn.
Fun.
Yeah, those 3. I mean,
yeah, that's the inner circle, I think. I mean, I'd have to do a little bit more research, and there's a good conversation to be had about that. But Gant was the one guy. I mean, Greg Vaughn had a history before coming to Cincinnati, and Gant did too. But Gant was still young enough that I thought, boy, if they could hang on to him, he and Sanders in the outfield together, for a bunch of years, it could have been something. And Shin-Soo Choo as well, but that was a different team. But Gant was Joey. Good question, because most people, I feel like, don't understand how critical Ron Gant was to that team, and therefore how critical he was to Reds history. And I think it's good to give him a little love.
Yeah. I was a big Ron Gant fan. It was like, this was the first year I really got into baseball when I was going to games and stuff. And like, I really loved like going to watching this team play because the first time I got it. So when my dad was like, well, Ron Gant's not on the Reds anymore, I was like, what? He was only here for show, I was like, where did he go? He's like, Atlanta. I was like, gosh, darn it.
Darn it.
Yeah. Remember, like, Atlanta just had that weird thing where they just reap the benefits of everything. Like, they got Kenny Lofton for a year. That was cool. Like, hated that.
Yeah, I'm sick of Atlanta.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm with you. All right, so 2 more. We have Rich Thompson, who asks, of the 1995 Reds, which outfielder was the least memorable or unremarkable? Steve Gibraltar, or I can't say that name right.
Gibraltar.
Yeah, like the Rock of Gibraltar.
Or Nigel Wilson.
Well, it's Nigel Wilson, because I don't even remember that guy. I do remember Steve Gibraltar. I've got a Steve Gibraltar baseball card laying around here somewhere. But
do you really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll find it. But I don't even remember Nigel Wilson. I'm not sure he even exists.
Yeah,
making names up is what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I had Joel on a couple weeks ago, one of these questions was like, who from the 2010 era Reds do you think you could beat in a bar fight? And I was like, first off, no one. But I have to pick someone. I guess I go Wilson Valdez because he's probably the only one there to be skinnier than me. So
All right, there you go.
yeah. And then the social manager Williams, this is our last one, and I like this one a lot. So the question fits neither criterion you listed, but I've listened to a lot of other. Been listening to another great pod, The Rewatchables. I'm fine with The Rewatchables as well. The Rewatchables, where they give out the Dion Waiters Award, the cast member that shined with a small amount of screen time. Who are your all-time Reds Dion Waiters Award candidates? Brief time with our Reds, but made the most of it.
Well, to me, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by short time with the Reds, but for me, that's going to be a guy we mentioned earlier, which is Kevin Mitchell, because Kevin Mitchell, I don't know how many games he played with the Reds, but when I say this, people think I'm being hyperbolic or just being silly like I am sometimes, but he's literally the best hitter I've ever seen in a Reds uniform during that time he was with the Reds. He wasn't healthy the whole time. He couldn't do much other than hit, but that guy could mash. So that's my guy, Kevin Mitchell.
Do not disparage the one-handed, over-the-shoulder defensive gem.
That's true.
Provided by Kevin Mitchell. I don't know, Tim. It might be a little. You might have been still in diapers or something.
I've seen the clip.
Jerk. But one of the all-time wow moments in the outfield was Kevin Mitchell making that catch.
I do remember that clip, so I know what you're talking about. Don't worry. I don't know. Can I go Orlando Cabrera? Because the 1 year he was with the Reds, he was kind of like the locker room leader for a while with Scott Rowland on the 2010 team. Is that fair?
Well, he was kind of an underrated glue guy on that team. That people never talk about anymore. And he wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination, but he was important to that team. He really was.
Seth and I laughed about it last week about he had this stretch where he played on all these 1 year deals, but every team he played on a 1 year deal with went to the playoffs. So, yeah, he was on the 04 Red Sox, and then I can't remember the other teams I'd have to go through, but we're getting close to the end of time here. But perfect. So thank you all for the questions there. To the both of you, Chad, I know this is actually your company, but still thank you for making some time to hang out with me tonight. You know, I text you all the time because I miss you dearly. So
I'll be back more often soon. Hopefully things are lining up so I can be back way more often. So because I miss it. I miss talking about this ridiculous franchise.
Yeah, I know. We miss you. We all miss you too. And of course, be sure to check out Chad's Substack, where I got to write a really fun piece this week. And I appreciate you letting me do that. That was really a lot of fun to write up. And I got to watch Rudy again and make fun of the real Rudy again. And so Steve, I'll give you backstory. I put in there where I talk about like when my dad showed me Rudy, and I'd like go talk the story about how like he was an awful human being in real life. And I asked Chad when he edited it, I was like, did you keep that spot in there for me? Because that's the only thing I really care about in the story. And he said, yes, I did. So I was very, very happy. Of course.
Right on.
So thank you all so much. Chad, do you want to do the shout outs here? You haven't done it in so long.
Yeah.
No, I want to listen to you do it. I love it. I want to hear it again.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of the Riverfront. I will be back on Sunday with Ben Brown for Late Night Reds as we're going to continue our position by position breakdown. Probably going to be a little shorter now because we're not talking about 10 guys like pitchers. So we're starting with catchers this week. So can't wait to talk 45 minutes about Tyler Stevenson and how much fun he's going to be really this year. So we're going to go and wrap up here. Shout out to Adam Dunn. Shouts to Lisa Alberto, Wayne Kentucky, and Eli Cash. For Todd Walker and Deion Sanders, this is Tim Daniel with Steven Baker and Chad Dotson saying, so long, Cincinnati.
Wow.